Since we all began watching anime, we've all come to a certain point in our weeb/otaku life where we could boldly say who our waifu/husbando is and what our main type of anime are. And sometimes one might also ignore what real life has to offer. I mean, who would blame them? Real life is pretty shit. But what would you do when you find out that your main waifu/husbando kicks the bucket? I'll tell you what, you'd enter a major state of depression. You lock yourself in your room for days, weeks or more, worry your friends, that's if you have any, lose your appetite, basically shutting yourself from the outside world. Now, Seirinuma is a perfect example of everything I just said. This XXL Fujoshi just had her heart crack after her main man died. After locking herself up from the outside world for a long period of time, her family finally decided to give her a wake-up call. Now, seeing how Seirinuma was is a pretty good example of how some normies view us otaku folk, and at times they might actually be right. But there are rare cases where even they're wrong. A basic example is Seirinuma. As you can see right here, she has changed quite a bit. This is what I like to call the awakening. To put it simply, after her husbando's death, Seirinuma entered a state of cleansing and healing. And when the time was right, she shed all the sadness and sorrow she had from the death of her husbando and has finally awakened to her true form that only few weaves have ever achieved. It's not as if she has forgotten about her man, but she just placed him in the Hall of Fame. At this point in time, nobody was able to recognize her. And in this form, no one would even think that such a gorgeous girl would actually be a Fujoshi crazed otaku. And this is where the awakened otaku enters a new state in their life, the normie's waifu/husbando magnet. This state is when all the other normies around her start to notice that she exists and automatically start doing things for her. It's the equivalent of the notice me senpai effect. As you can see right here, Seirinuma has gone from being a fat Fujoshi to having her very own harem. Once these four guys right here laid their virgin eyes on her, they were instantly enslaved by her beauty, and as of this moment, Operation Claim the Girl has begun. But even though she has awakened, her inner Fujoshi crazed otaku was still there, and sure enough, the four husbandos found out about her hidden secret. But due to the fact that her beauty was out of this world, they accepted that part of her as well, which in turn gave way for Seiruma's real personality to show. Now that she can be who she really wants to be in front of her harem, she decides to take things a step forward and invite her husbandos to a convention. Now, no normie in his right mind would even think of going there, especially on Christmas Eve. But when you have such a goddess ask you to go, then you have no other choice but to go with the flow. But at this point in time, it is very wise to recall what your love interest's favorite anime type is. Because right here, these four escorted Seirinuma to the convention and agreed to help her buy all the stuff she wanted. And what she wanted was BL doujinshis. So how do you think that a few guys going around the convention buying BL doujinshis would look like? Don't answer that. But they endured that just so that they could score some points with their princess. Well, being such a beauty, at a convention for that matter, is quite a rare sight. And by looking how she did, it wouldn't have been impossible to imagine that at least one creepy cosplay photographer would show up right when the husbandos aren't there. And when you have such a cliche going on, right at that moment, a new rival appears and saves Seirinuma from that creep. Who, you may ask? A cosplayer, of course. Then once you see that happen, everyone in the anime and everyone watching the anime are wondering the exact same thing. Who is that handsome cosplayer? And this is where another cliche bomb is dropped on our heads. Because the answer to that question is that the cosplayer is none other than another student at their high school. I mean, how else would you add this other person to Seirinuma's harem? Oh, and what's more, the cosplayer is a rich girl who also rides BL doujinshis that Seirinuma is a fan of and loves with every fiber of her being. Yep, say it with me folks. Cliche! Now even though we have this chick that's trying to join the Operation Claim the Girl, we still need some sort of proof that this rich girl is romantically attracted to Seirinuma. And when you ask, you shall receive. Okay, that's enough proof. And so, as of this moment, these 5 brave souls embark on their quest in order to claim the heart of the fair maiden. It was a very hard and treacherous journey, especially since later down the line, a student teacher, who was also the elder brother of one of the harem members, lets himself in and joins the harem as well. But his methods were more aggressive. And by that, I mean that while the other 5 were fighting fair and square to try and win Seirunuma's heart, this dude tried to bring each and every one of his rivals down so that he was the only one left standing. But thanks to his younger brother, that didn't happen. Now that the harem has gone back down to only 5 members, they all finally decide to confess their love to her. And after a week of contemplating and going out with each of them, Serinuma has finally come to a conclusion and went to give them her answer. And the person she chose was none other than the husbando whose death caused her to lose weight. That's right, folks. The anime she loved was getting a second season, and it turns out that her main man might be making a comeback. So kids, the moral of the story is, when it comes to a battle of love, you might win against another human. But if you're up against a 2D waifu slash husbando, then you're pretty much screwed.